light. Buddhāvataṃsaka Sutra. Book 30. The Incalculable. In this book, there are many super large numbers. Due to the app that cannot read large Arabic numbers correctly, this book has been revised substituting some Arabic numbers with its English names. The translation is based on Britannica, and the numbers are translated into American number names instead of British ways. At that time the enlightening being Mind King said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, the Buddhas speak of incalculable, measureless, boundless, incomparable, innumerable, unaccountable, unthinkable, immeasurable, unspeakable, untold numbers. What are these?" The Buddha said, "It is good that you ask the Buddha, the truly enlightened one, in order to have the beings of the world penetrate the meaning of the numbers known to the Buddha. Listen carefully and think well about this. I will explain for you." Then the enlightening being Mind King willingly received the teaching. The Buddha said, 10 to the 10th power times 10 to the 10th power equals 10 to the 20th power. 10 to the 20th power times 10 to the 20th power equals 10 to the 40th power. 10 to the 40th power times 10 to the 40th power equals 10 to the 80th power. 10 to the 80th power times 10 to the 80th power equals 10 to the power of 160. 10 to the power of 160 squared equals 10 to the power of 320. 10 to the power of 320 squared equals 10 to the power of 640. 10 to the power of 640 squared equals 10 to the power of 1280. 10 to the power of 1280 squared equals 10 to the power of 2560. That squared equals 10 to the power of 5120. That squared equals 10 to the power of 10,240. That squared equals 10 to the power of 20,480. That squared is 10 to the power of 40,960. That squared is 10 to the power of 81,920. That squared is 10 to the power of 163,840. That squared is 10 to the power of 327,680. That squared is 10 to the power of 655,360. That squared is 10 to the power of 1,311,720. That squared is 10 to the power of 2,623,540. That squared is 10 to the power of 5,247,080. That squared is 10 to the power of 10,494,160. That squared is 10 to the power of 20,988,320. That squared is 10 to the power of 41,976,640. That squared is 10 to the power of 83,953,280. That squared is 10 to the power of 167,906,560. That squared is 10 to the power of 335,813,120. That squared is 10 to the power of 671,626,240. That squared is 10 to the power of 1,343,252,480. That squared is 10 to the power of 2,686,000,960. that squared is 10 to the power of 5,373,009,920, that squared is 10 to the power of 10,746,019,840, that squared is 10 to the power of 21,492,039,680, that squared is 10 to the power of 42,984,079,360, that squared is 10 to the power of 85,968,158,720, that squared is 10 to the power of 171,936,317,440, that squared is 10 to the power of 343,872,634,880, that squared is 10 to the power of 687,745,269,760, that squared is 10 to the power of 1,375,490,539,520, that squared is 10 to the power of 2,750,981,079,040, that squared is 10 to the power of 5,501,962,158,080, that squared is 10 to the power of 11,303,924,316,160, that squared is 10 to the power of 22,7,848,632,320, that squared is 10 to the power of 44,015,697,264,640, that squared is 10 to the power of 88,031,394,529,280, that squared is 10 to the power of 176,062,789,058,560, that squared is 10 to the power of 352,125,578,117,120, that squared is 10 to the power of 704,251,156,234,240, that squared is 10 to the power of 1,408,502,302,468,480, that squared is 10 to the power of 2,817,4,604,936,960, that squared is 10 to the power of 5,634,9,209,893,920, that squared is 10 to the power of 11,418,419,747,840, that squared is 10 to the power of 22,536,839,495,680, that squared is 10 to the power of 45,72,673,678,991,360, that squared is 10 to the power of 90,144,147,357,982,720, that squared is 10 to the power of 180 quadrillion 288 trillion 294 billion 715 million 965,440. That squared is 10 to the power of 360 quadrillion 576 trillion 589 billion 431 million 930,880. That squared is 10 to the power of 721 quadrillion 153 trillion 178 billion 863 million 861,760. That squared is 10 to the power of 1 quintillion 442 quadrillion 306 trillion 357 billion 727 million 723,520. That squared is 10 to the power of 2 quintillion 884 quadrillion 612 trillion 715 billion 455 million 447,040. That squared is 10 to the power of 5 quintillion 769 quadrillion 225 trillion 430 billion 910 million 894,080. That squared is 10 to the power of 11 quintillion 538 quadrillion 450 trillion 861 billion 821 million 788,160. That squared is 10 to the power of 23 quintillion 76 quadrillion 901 trillion 773 billion 643 million 576,320. That squared is 10 to the power of 46 quintillion 153 quadrillion 803 trillion 447 billion 287 million 152,640. That squared is 10 to the power of 92 quintillion 307 quadrillion 606 trillion 894 billion 574 million 305,280. That squared is 10 to the power of 184 quintillion 615 quadrillion 213 trillion 789 billion 148 million 610,560. That squared is 10 to the power of 369 quintillion 230 quadrillion 427 trillion 578 billion 297 million 221,120. That squared is 10 to the power of 738 quintillion 460 quadrillion 895 trillion 156 billion 594 million 442,240. That squared is 10 to the power of 1 sextillion 476 quintillion 921 quadrillion 790 trillion 313 billion 188 million 884,480. That squared is 10 to the power of 2 sextillion 953 quintillion 843 quadrillion 580 trillion 626 billion 377 million 768,960. That squared is 10 to the power of 5 sextillion 907 quintillion 687 quadrillion 161 trillion 252 billion 755 million 537,920. That squared is 10 to the power of 11 sextillion 815 quintillion 374 quadrillion 322 trillion 505 billion 511 million 65,840. that squared is 10 to the power of 23 sextillion 630 quintillion 748 quadrillion 645 trillion 11 billion 22 million 131,680. That squared is 10 to the power of 47 sextillion 261 quintillion 497 quadrillion 290 trillion 22 billion 44 million 263,360. That squared is 10 to the power of 94 sextillion 522 quintillion 994 quadrillion 580 trillion 44 billion 88 million 526,720. That squared is 10 to the power of 189 sextillion 45 quintillion 989 quadrillion 160 trillion 88 billion 177 million 53,520. That squared is 10 to the power of 378 sextillion 91 quintillion 978 quadrillion 320 trillion 176 billion 354 million 107,040. That squared is 10 to the power of 756 sextillion 183 quintillion 956 quadrillion 640 trillion 352 billion 708 million 214,080. That squared is 10 to the power of 1 septillion 512 sextillion 367 quintillion 913 quadrillion 280 trillion 705 billion 416 million 428,160. That squared is 10 to the power of 3 septillion 24 sextillion 735 quintillion 826 quadrillion 561 trillion 410 billion 832 million 856,220. That squared is 10 to the power of 6 septillion 49 sextillion 471 quintillion 653 quadrillion 122 trillion 821 billion 665 million 712,640. That squared is 10 to the power of 12 septillion 98 sextillion 943 quintillion 306 quadrillion 245 trillion 643 billion 331 million 425,280. That squared is 10 to the power of 24 septillion 197 sextillion 886 quintillion 612 quadrillion 491 trillion 286 billion 462 million 850,560. That squared is 10 to the power of 48 septillion 395 sextillion 773 quintillion 224 quadrillion 982 trillion 672 billion 925 million 701,120. That squared is 10 to the power of 96 septillion 791 sextillion 546 quintillion 449 quadrillion 965 trillion 145 billion 831 million 402,340. That squared is 10 to the power of 193 septillion 583 sextillion 92 quintillion 899 quadrillion 930 trillion 291 billion 662 billion 804,480. That squared is 10 to the power of 387 septillion 166 sextillion 185 quintillion 799 quadrillion 860 trillion 583 billion 325 million 608,960. that squared is 10 to the power of 774 septillion 332 sextillion 371 quintillion 599 quadrillion 721 trillion 166 billion 651 million 217,920. That squared is 10 to the power of 1 octillion 548 septillion 664 sextillion 743 quintillion 199 quadrillion 442 trillion 333 billion 302 million 635,840. That squared is 10 to the power of 3 octillion 97 septillion 329 sextillion 486 quintillion 398 quadrillion 884 trillion 666 billion 605 million 271,680. That squared is 10 to the power of 6 octillion 194 septillion 658 sextillion 972 quintillion 797 quadrillion 769 trillion 333 billion 210 million 543,360. That squared is 10 to the power of 12 octillion 389 septillion 317 sextillion 945 quintillion 595 quadrillion 538 trillion 666 billion 421 million 86,720. That squared is 10 to the power of 24 octillion 778 septillion 635 sextillion 891 quintillion 191 quadrillion 77 trillion 332 billion 842 million 173,440. That squared is 10 to the power of 49 octillion 557 septillion 271 sextillion 782 quintillion 382 quadrillion 154 trillion 665 billion 686 million 346,880. That squared is 10 of the power of 99 octillion 114 septillion 543 sextillion 564 quintillion 764 quadrillion 309 trillion 331 billion 372 million 693,760. That squared is 10 to the power of 198 octillion 229 septillion 87 sextillion 129 quintillion 528 quadrillion 618 trillion 662 billion 745 million 387,520. That squared is 10 to the power of 396 octillion 458 septillion 174 sextillion 259 quintillion 57 quadrillion 237 trillion 325 billion 490 million 775,040. That squared is 10 to the power of 792 octillion 916 septillion 348 sextillion 518 quintillion 114 quadrillion 474 trillion 650 billion 981 million 550,080. That squared is 10 to the power of 1,585 octillion 832 septillion 697 sextillion 36 quintillion 228 quadrillion 949 trillion 301 billion 963 million 100,160. that squared is 10 to the power of 3 nonillion 171 665 septillion 394 sextillion 72 quintillion 457 quadrillion 898 trillion 603 billion 926 million 200,000 and 320. That squared is 10 to the power of 6 nonillion 343 octillion 330 septillion 788 sextillion 144 quintillion 915 quadrillion 797 trillion 207 billion 852 million 400,000 and 640. That squared is 10 to the power of 12 nonillion 686 octillion 661 septillion 576 sextillion 289 quintillion 831 quadrillion 594 trillion 415 billion 704 million 801,000 and 280. That squared is 10 to the power of 25 nonillion 373 octillion 323 septillion 152 sextillion 579 quintillion 663 quadrillion 188 trillion 831 billion 409 million 602,000 and 560. That squared is 10 to the power of 50 nonillion 746 octillion 646 septillion 305 sextillion 159 quintillion 326 quadrillion 377 trillion 662 billion 819 million 205,000 and 120. That squared is 10 to the power of 101 nonillion 493 octillion 292 septillion 610 sextillion 318 quintillion 652 quadrillion 755 trillion 325 billion 638 million 410,000 and 240. That squared is an incalculable. An incalculable to the fourth power is a measureless. A measureless to the fourth power is a boundless. A boundless to the fourth power is an incomparable. An incomparable to the fourth power is an innumerable. An innumerable to the fourth power is an unaccountable. An unaccountable to the fourth power is an unthinkable. An unthinkable to the fourth power is an immeasurable. An immeasurable to the fourth power is an unspeakable. An unspeakable to the fourth power is an untold, which is unspeakably unspeakable. An untold multiplied by itself is a square untold. Then the Buddha spoke these verses to the enlightening being Mind King. Untold unspeakables fill all unspeakables. In unspeakable eons explanation of the unspeakable cannot be finished. If untold Buddha lands are reduced to atoms, in one atom are untold lands, and as in one, so in each. The atoms to which these Buddha lands are reduced in an instant are unspeakable, and so are the atoms of continuous reduction moment to moment going on for untold eons. These atoms contain lands unspeakably many, and the atoms in these lands are even harder to tell of. Counting this way for unspeakable eons, using unspeakable numbers, counting eons by these atoms, one atom standing for 10 myriad unspeakable numbers of eons. If you praise a single universally good for that many eons, it would still be impossible to exhaust the amount of virtue of universal good. On a point the size of the tip of a single fine hair are unspeakably many universally goods. The same is true of all points all throughout the cosmos. The lands on a point the size of a hair tip are measureless, unspeakable. So are the lands on every single point throughout the whole of space. The lands on those points have innumerable different kinds of abode. There are untold lands of different kinds, untold lands of the same kind. On untold points of hair-tip size are untold pure lands, their various arrays unspeakable, their various wonders unspeakable. On each point in them are recited untold Buddha names, there being to each and every name untold numbers of Buddhas. On the body of each Buddha appear unspeakably many pores. In each of these pores they manifest unspeakably many forms. The unspeakably many pores each radiate unspeakably many beams of light. In each of those beams of light appear unspeakably many lotuses. In each of those lotuses are unspeakably many petals. In each of those petals appear unspeakably many forms. In those untold forms also appear untold petals. In the petals are untold light rays, in the light rays untold forms. In each of those untold forms appear untold lights. In the lights appear untold moons, and the moons also manifest untold moons. In each of those untold moons appear untold beams of light. In each of those light beams also appear untold suns. In each of those untold suns are manifest untold forms. And in each of those forms again are manifest untold rays of light. In each of those rays of light appear untold lanthrons, each with untold ornaments, each with untold lights, with untold beautiful forms in the lights, with untold pure lights in the forms. In each of those pure lights also appear various subtle lights. These lights also radiate various lights, untold, unspeakably many. In each of these various lights appear wondrous jewels like mountains. The jewels appearing in each light are unspeakably many, untold. One of those mountain-like jewels manifests untold lands. All of the mountain-like jewels manifest lands like this. Reducing one land to atoms, the forms in each atom are untold. All of the lands atomized, each atom's forms are unspeakably many, untold. These various forms in atoms all produce untold lights. In each light appear untold Buddhas. Untold are each Buddha's discourses, in each discourse are untold sublime verses. Untold are those who gain understanding on hearing them. Untold understandings in each mental instant reveal unspeakably many truths. They reveal all future Buddhas externally expounding their teachings, each Buddha's teachings unspeakably many, with untold purities of all sorts. Uttering unspeakably many subtle voices, churning untold cycles of true teaching, in each cycle of teaching expounding unspeakably many scriptures, in each scripture defining unspeakably many doctrines. In each of those doctrines explaining unspeakably many principles, with each of those principles taming untold sentient beings. Then again, on a single point Buddhas made well for untold eons, and as on one point, so on all points, for the same number of eons, the non-obstruction of their minds unspeakable, emanating unspeakably many Buddhas, each emanation Buddha also manifesting untold emanations. The reality bodies of those Buddhas are unspeakably many, the emanated bodies of those Buddhas are unspeakably many, their adornments are unspeakably measureless. They travel infinitely through the 10 directions, coursing through untold lands, observing untold sentient beings, purifying untold sentient beings, taming untold sentient beings. Their embellishments are unspeakable, their masteries are unspeakable, their mystic transformations are unspeakable, their spiritual powers are unspeakable, their spheres are unspeakable, their empowerments are unspeakable, the worlds they live in are unspeakable, their pure characteristics of reality are unspeakable. They deliver untold discourses, in each and every discourse expounding untold doctrines, in each and every doctrine explaining untold principles, each and every principle containing untold definitions, each and every definition conquering untold beings. unspeakable homogeneous principles, unspeakable homogeneous minds, unspeakable heterogeneous principles, unspeakable heterogeneous minds, unspeakable heterogeneous faculties, unspeakable heterogeneous languages. In every mental moment, wherever they go, they tame unspeakable numbers of beings. Their occult projections are unspeakable, their miraculous displays are unspeakable. The times and ages therein are unspeakable, the differentiations therein are unspeakable. Enlightening beings can explain them in particular, while mathematicians cannot comprehend them. The great and small lands on a point, polluted, pure, gross, and subtle, all of them unspeakably many, enlightening beings comprehend and can distinguish. Reducing a land to atoms, those atoms are measureless, untold. Boundless lands, as many as these atoms, are gathered on a single hair tip. These lands, unspeakable, are together on a hair tip without crowding. Without causing the hair tip to expand, those lands all gather there. The lands therein retain their original form, without mix-up. Just as one land does not disorder the others, the same is true of all lands. The realms in space, without bound, all are arrayed on a hair tip. These lands on a hair tip enlightening beings can tell of in an instant. Into a minute poor untold lands enter in succession. The poor can admit those lands, but those lands cannot fill the poor. The number of eons of their entry is unspeakable, the number of eons of their admission is unspeakable. The durations of their procession, array, and abiding are all unspeakable eons. Thus having taken in and settled these lands, enlightening beings' spheres are unspeakable. Their devices during entry are unspeakable, their deeds after entry are unspeakable. The clear comprehensions of their cognitive faculties are unspeakable, their journeys in all directions are unspeakable, their vigorous endeavors are unspeakable, their autonomous mystic transfigurations are unspeakable. Their meditations are unspeakable. Their great vows are unspeakable, their spheres of action are unspeakable, all their attainments are unspeakable. The purities of their physical actions are unspeakable, the purities of their verbal actions are unspeakable, the purities of their mental actions are unspeakable, the purities of their resolutions are unspeakable. The purities of their subtle knowledge are unspeakable. The purities of their sublime wisdom are unspeakable, their perceptions of reality are unspeakable, their cessations of doubts are unspeakable. Their escapes from birth and death are unspeakable, their ascents to the absolute state are unspeakable, their deep concentrations are unspeakable, their total comprehensions are unspeakable. All sentient beings are unspeakable. All Buddha lands are unspeakable, knowledge of sentient beings' forms is unspeakable, knowledge of their dispositions is unspeakable, knowledge of their deeds and their results is unspeakable, knowledge of their intellects is unspeakable, knowledge of their embodiments is unspeakable, knowledge of their types is unspeakable, knowledge of their species is unspeakable, knowledge of their birthplaces is unspeakable, knowledge of when they are born is unspeakable. Knowledge of their having been born is unspeakable, knowledge of their understandings is unspeakable, knowledge of their tendencies is unspeakable, knowledge of their languages is unspeakable, knowledge of their works is unspeakable. Enlightening beings with great compassion benefit all worldly beings, manifesting untold bodies everywhere, entering untold Buddha lands, seeing untold enlightening beings, developing untold knowledges, seeking untold teachings, broadcasting untold lessons of Buddhas. They manifest untold various bodies, traveling to untold lands, showing untold spiritual powers, pervading untold regions, emanating untold bodies in each place, approaching untold Buddhas, making untold offerings of untold infinite varieties, untold pure clear jewels, untold beautiful lotus blossoms, untold garlands of the finest scent, offering them to untold enlightened ones, their pure faith untold, supreme resolution untold, powerful aspiration untold, honoring untold Buddhas. They practice untold generosity. Their minds in the untold past, giving to all who seek, untold, giving all, untold times. The purities of their self-control are untold. The purities of their minds are untold. They eulogize untold Buddhas, delight in untold truths. They accomplish untold forbearances, their acceptance of non-origination untold. They embody untold tranquillities, dwelling in untold states of peace. They exude untold energy, their past determinations untold, their irreversible aspiration untold, their immutable wills untold. Their treasuries of all concentrations are untold. They examine untold phenomena and principles, stilled in untold concentrations, mastering untold meditations. Their attainments of wisdom are untold, their freedoms in concentration are untold, their comprehensions of things are untold, their clear visions of Buddhas are untold. They cultivate measureless, untold practices, undertake untold far-reaching vows. Their profound spheres are untold, their pure means of teaching are untold. The power of enlightening beings' ways is unspeakable. The stations of enlightening beings' ways are unspeakable. Their right recollection is unspeakable. The realms of principle and fact are unspeakable. They cultivate unspeakably many means of enlightenment. They study unspeakably many profound sciences. Their immeasurable wisdom is unspeakable. Their ultimate wisdom is unspeakable. Their knowledge of things is unspeakable. Their pure cycles of teaching are unspeakable. Their great clouds of teachings are unspeakable. Their great rain of teaching is unspeakable. Their spiritual powers are unspeakably many. Their techniques are unspeakably many. Their knowledge of empty quiescence is unspeakable. The continuity of mental instants is unspeakable. Their measureless practices are unspeakable. Their constancy instant to instant is unspeakable. The oceans of Buddha lands are untold. They can go to them all, unspeakably. The differences in the lands are untold. Their various purities are untold. Their different adornments are untold. Their boundless forms are untold. Their various arrays are untold. Their various refinements are untold. Pure Buddha lands are unspeakably many. Polluted Buddha lands are unspeakably many. Knowing sentient beings is unspeakable. Knowing their natures is unspeakable. Knowing their deeds and rewards is unspeakable. Knowing their mentalities is unspeakable. Knowing beings' characters is unspeakable. Knowing their understandings and inclinations is unspeakable. Their defilement and purity are unspeakable. Observing and civilizing them are unspeakable. Transforming powers are unspeakable. Manifesting various bodies, untold. Cultivating untold energy, enlightening beings liberate untold sentient beings. They manifest untold mystic transfigurations, emanate untold great beams of light, with untold various forms, and purify untold sentient beings. Each of their pores, untold, radiate webs of light, untold, the webs of light manifesting untold hues, illumining untold Buddha lands. Their courage and fearlessness are untold. Their technical skills are untold, taming untold sentient beings, emancipating them from birth and death. Their pure deeds are untold. Their pure words are untold. Their boundless thoughts are untold. Their sublime practices are untold. They develop untold jewels of knowledge, and enter untold realms of reality. Enlightening beings' mnemonic powers are unutterable. They are able to learn inexplicably. The voices of the wise are untold. The purity of their voices is unspeakable. Their accurate awareness of reality is untold. Their awakening of sentient beings is untold. They embody untold dignified bearing. Their pure actions are untold. They achieve untold expertise and educate untold worldlings. The offspring of Buddhas are unspeakably many, and so are their pure, excellent acts. They eulogize untold Buddhas, their praises inexhaustible, beyond telling. The guides of the world are unspeakably many. So are their expositions and descriptions. Those enlightening beings are unspeakably many, their pure virtues untold. Their spheres are unutterable, they can remain there indefinitely, their knowledge therein untold. They live through all ages, which none can ever tell. They are gladdened by untold Buddhas, their wisdom and equanimity are beyond speech. They penetrate untold truths, with untold freedom from obstruction amid phenomena. Past, present, and future being like space, unspeakable, their knowledge of all times is untold. Their comprehension of past, present, and future unutterable, they dwell in knowledge beyond speech. Their superlative actions are untold, their measureless vows are untold, their pure great vows are untold, they accomplish ineffable enlightenment. The enlightenment of the Buddhas is inexpressible. They develop untold knowledge, discern untold principles, know all laws, beautify untold Buddha lands, and cultivate untold powers. They cultivate practice for an unutterably long time, and are ineffably enlightened in a single instant. The Buddha's freedoms are unspeakable, their extensive explanations of truth cannot be recounted. Their various spiritual powers are inexplicable, they appear in untold worlds. Their cycles of pure teaching are ineffable, their courageous ability to teach unspeakable, their various expositions unutterable, their compassion for the world cannot be told. Through all eons, unspeakably many, they praise untold merits and virtues. While unspeakable eons may end, those untold virtues cannot be exhausted. Untold enlightened ones with untold tongues praise the untold virtues of Buddhas. Impossible to exhaust in untold eons. The living beings in the 10 directions all attain enlightenment at once. Therein one Buddha can manifest to all untold embodiments, each of these untold bodies manifesting untold heads, each of these untold heads manifesting untold tongues, each of the untold tongues manifesting untold voices, each of the untold voices remaining for untold eons. As is one, so are all Buddhas. As one body, so all bodies. As one head, so all heads. As one tongue, so all tongues. As one voice, so all voices, ever praising the enlightened for untold eons. The untold eons may end, but praise of enlightened virtues cannot be exhausted. In a single atom there can be untold lotus worlds. In each lotus world are untold chief of goodness Buddhas, pervading the entire cosmos and every atom therein. Worlds, becoming, subsisting, and decaying, are measureless, unspeakable in number. The point of a single atom is boundless, containing measureless lands therein. The differentiations of the 10 directions are unutterable. The arrays of the oceans of worlds cannot be all told of. In each land are Buddhas with lifespans of unspeakable eons. Those Buddhas' deeds cannot be recounted, Their profound teachings are unutterable. Their great spiritual powers are ineffable. Their unimpeded knowledge is inexpressible. They enter into a point, the events at that point untold. They achieve the 10 powers, unspeakable, and awaken to ineffable enlightenment. Entering untold realms of pure principle, they gain untold treasuries of deep knowledge, various numerical measurements, untold. They comprehend, all, as they are. Various physical measurements, untold. They completely master. Various concentrations, untold. They can pass eons in, each one. In the presence of untold Buddhas, the purifications they practice are untold. They attain unutterable mental freedoms and journey in all directions, beyond the power of speech. The manifestations of their spiritual powers are untold. Their spheres of action are boundless, ineffable. They go to untold lands and understand untold Buddhas. Their vigor and courage are unspeakable, their knowledge and comprehension unutterable. They do not act on rules, nor do they not act on them. Their penetration of realms of objects is infinite. For unreckonable vast eons they travel constantly through the 10 directions, infinitely. Their knowledge of enlightening means is infinite. Their knowledge of truth is infinite. Their knowledge of spiritual powers is infinite. Their miracles in each mental instant are infinite. They comprehend infinitely each one of the infinite Buddha's teachings. They can realize enlightenment at once or can enter realization at various times. The Buddha lands on a hair tip are infinite. The Buddha lands in an atom are infinite. They can go to all these Buddha lands and see the infinite Buddhas. They realize one truth infinitely, and enter the infinite line of Buddhas. The Buddha's lands are infinite. They can travel to all and attain enlightenment. The lands, beings, and Buddhas have infinite distinctions in individuality. As such, past, present, and future worlds are boundless. Enlightening beings can see them all. The end of Book 30.